Claris Talk AI. I'm Matt Navarre. Our special guest today, Alexis Allen. Welcome.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great. You've been on here before. Chris and I have another episode coming up, but I wanted to talk about several things with you. One of them was, well, you went to Engage. I did not. And now I wish I
Yes, I
had.
did.
Um, we're going to talk about your upcoming conference, which is exciting.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but at first I want to just dive into Engage and talk about like what you thought of it, what you learned, what your
It was
goals.
really fun. There's a really like a palpable energy in the air. I think people are super excited. AI obviously is the big topic for the year. Everybody's super excited about what AI can bring, but I think it's really reinvigorated the Claris platform, not only from the point of view of Claris, but also people who are using FileMaker. And there's just a lot of excitement around that. There's a lot of new tools, I think. And personally, I have to just full disclosure, I'm not deep into AI. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I'm a bit of a, I don't want to say traditionalist because that's not quite right, but I really feel like personally, I want to focus on kind of the basics. It's just not my personality to jump on the latest thing. I'm like, what can I do
Yeah.
that's really well grounded and stuff like that? But at the same time, obviously, like I guess I would say I'm a mid adopter, right? When something new comes out,
Mm-hmm.
I like to have people kind of who are, really on the bleeding edge go out and figure it out. And then I'm like, oh, I can use this and I can use that. Like you're probably on the bleeding edge of AI compared to me.
I
So I'll
mean,
just let you tell me what I should be
well, I try
doing,
to.
and then we're good.
I have to say this. I have to say this. I try to be on the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge. But just before this podcast, I asked you to do a review of something, an interface I worked on, and you gave
Yes,
me feedback that there's no way I could have got from AI.
right.
The
Yep.
area of your expertise is something that it just does not do yet, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's really an important point about AI is that it has its place, clearly. And I think there's going to be cool uses for it that maybe we don't even know yet. But I think in a way, it's going to actually make what humans do actually even more valuable
Yeah, yeah,
because there are
that's
things that it cannot do. It cannot give the personal touch. And honestly, if you think about even from a design perspective, we may have talked about this before on the other podcast that we did about AI. Um, you know, there people want to feel that a human has put some effort into what it is that they're presenting, right? If you feel like the thing that you were given to use is just, it didn't cost anything to make and it doesn't feel like there's been any thought put into it and it feels just very automated. Just as humans, we don't love that experience. Like we want to think that someone has put effort into it. I mean, think about, a low-end car versus like a very specialty, car that is like a lot of effort's been put into it. Like, why is a Lamborghini so much more expensive?
yeah,
It's partly materials, but it's also workmanship, craftsmanship, knowledge of all those things. So
yeah.
just, I mean, humans are humans, no matter what the technology is that comes along. So I feel like we're still going to value that about it. And so I think the goal I think would be to find those use cases where, humans are not very good at crunching numbers and dealing with very large amounts of data. The uses that I found it in my own experience is kind of like if I have a huge document of like survey responses or something,
Yeah.
right? I can feed that into AI and it can pull out some insights, especially when it's not as structured. It's not like a single value in a field. Like people are kind of phrasing the same thing slightly different ways.
Yeah.
It's really good at that. But customer service, like you said, design critiques that kind of take the user into consideration, that's harder for it to do. But
Yeah.
overall, I found
I
there's
think
super
a
a
little,
lot of
but yeah.
excitement, a lot of people, lots of ideas, and also it was 40 years of FileMaker this year. So I mean that's a big, a big milestone. I've been in
Yeah.
FileMaker for a long time. I don't know about you. I started in
Long time.
I think 1996 or 97 with version 3. And so there was the FileMaker Museum that they had. But before we get into that, when did you start?
Mhm. I started way before that. I started actually doing databases in 1983. And then when
Wow.
FileMaker came out, well, I didn't start like the day one. FileMaker came out April 1st, 1984. 1985. Sorry, yeah,
Okay.
April 1st, 1985. So like a little, like a year after the Mac came out. Um, and I think I started with it around 87.
Yeah, so a while. But there's lots of people who have come to it like maybe 10 years ago. It seems
Yeah.
like around, version 12, 13, there was a lot of influx. But I think there's going to be more coming now. And
Yeah.
that seems to me to be the sense. Things
People
are a
who
little
come to
bit
my
chaotic
class
at the
started with it
moment,
six
but
months ago. I mean, I love seeing people who have 6 months ago and then they're like, this is cool. I want to learn how to do this, you know? Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And
I'm
it's just
happy
as
with.
exciting as it ever was, right? That you can make your own software and all the reasons why we got started in the first place are still
Yeah.
true today.
So, except one, I think. I think it's
What's
much
that?
harder to start from like when we started it with three, even though it was actually that was the first version that it was a real program. Because before that,
Yep, it was
you
relational. It
couldn't really build a big
was
app.
flat
I mean, you
file.
could build
Yep.
some pretty big things with us. There was some real solutions built with like 2.1 or whatever. But at three, when it became relational, that was a huge change. And then the next really big one was, well, like cross-platform, ODBC. Uh, I think Crossfire was maybe 4 or 4.1, something like that. Server came out way back early. Um, and then seven, of course,
Seven was
a
the
huge
big
change.
change, yeah.
Um, yeah, so tell me what else? So what else from
Yeah,
Engage?
so I went to the Claris Museum. That was super fun. They had a bunch of artifacts uh, all collected in a room there you could kind of look. It was really blast from the past, like those old, boxes of software that we had hanging around
Yeah.
our office for years and
Uh-huh.
years. So it was fun to see
And
some of
manuals,
the yeah, manuals, things from previous
books.
Engage, yeah, like bags and stuff like that, t-shirts, all of those kind of things. So that was really
Nice.
fun. And yeah, I think it was a real good connection between the past and the future. Like it has this real history. I mean, it's something to be a software company that's been around for 40 years continuously, and but then also
Yeah.
still with the latest kind of technology being incorporated into it and people being able to do really new things with it that are up to date. Like I know all for myself also, I have a large client who's really happy that they're an Apple company and they seem to be leaning
Mm-hmm.
more into their identity as an Apple company. And that's really comforting for a lot of larger clients who are concerned about having a small developer or a team of two or three people, even who are looking after this large solution because
Right.
it has the backing of Apple. So that
Yeah. Yeah.
history is
Yeah.
super important, I think, for, providing a foundation for the future. And I'm excited and I felt it in the air as well at Engage.
Great. I heard that there was some pretty big things talked about at the opening session. I know some of those were AI related. Was there like a big bomb drop or something like that?
You're asking me to reach into my memory. I don't know. They did have it at the like last year, there wasn't enough room in the venue to hold everybody, and
Yeah.
so some people were in a different room. This year they did it at the hotel, and so it was all in an auditorium where everybody was gathered together, which was really nice. It was a
Yeah.
little bit like the old DEF CON days where you were all in one room and kind of watching it. And to be honest, I'm sorry, I don't remember any big bomb drops, but it was certainly a fun, session, and they also did the awards at the beginning. So that was another change as well. Whereas the awards in the past have been done at the end at the closing session. This year they had an event, which was actually kind of nice to just have like a mixer to be able to say hi bye to people that you're not going to see for a while and just catch up
Yeah.
to people you hadn't maybe talked to. And then there was no formal kind of closing session. All of the awards and things were done right at the start. And so Robert No, I'm just remembering the people that I know. I'm sure there was others. Robert No received an award for community, I believe, and then Wim as well received a Lifetime Achievement Award. And he's like, "I'm not done yet.
Sure.
Doesn't mean
I
I'm
love that.
over."
Yeah, I think Vince won one and he was like, hey, I've still got more to do. Christopher Light
Yeah,
won an award.
exactly.
He'll talk about that one to add to
Okay,
the
cool.
67 other ones that he has.
Well deserved.
Yeah, he has a
So
lot.
yeah, so that was that. And trying to think if there is anything else. I attended a bunch of sessions that were I attended Gaith's session. He's the design lead at Claris, and that was super. I was really glad that we didn't really disagree on anything. We were all kind
Hmm.
of saying the same thing, and he's really trying to bring that design thinking to the Claris platform. And so I think we haven't really seen a lot of that yet, but it seems like that's what they're working on, and they're kind of thinking design first or design focused more than they have in the past, which I think is
Yeah,
really welcome now to
yeah,
have. And it's hard, right? Like again, we were talking about a piece of software that's been around for 40 years. You have a model that has been, established already. Changing that in a significant way, I'm sure, is very challenging and difficult. And so, it needs somebody who's really going to think through, what are the implications that you don't want to break
yeah, yeah,
people's
yeah.
solutions and all of these kinds
Yeah,
of things too,
the
right?
one thing
So
that it can't do is break anything from the past, right? That's like one of
that's
the things
right.
it's been really, really good at, except for like a few versions, like the today function or whatever from forever ago. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah. I remember like opening a file and said, calculating the today function. It took like 5 minutes every single time you opened it. That was like a long
Yes.
throwback.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I'm really glad to hear that, that design thing, because we had a period in the past when there was staff at FileMaker who were really focused on the design. Um, yeah, and then when she left, that changed. So,
Yeah, I think it's always very difficult, and I think it mirrors the struggle that FileMaker developers have in their own lives as well, which is like the functional versus the aesthetic. I had a whole presentation that I did last year. I was honored to go to a bunch of places around the world to deliver that presentation. I
yeah,
think it
you
really
did.
resonated because you're like, how much, I want this to work, right? But I also want it to look nice, and which side do I lean on? And Claris is a company that is trying to provide a product that is serving many different audiences, right? Some people are brand new, like you were
Mhm.
saying, maybe it's harder today to get your foot in the door. With FileMaker, it's not as easy to start as it once
It's a
was. That's
development environment now.
partly,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's a platform. It's not just, it's not as, I mean, you can do more with it. So it's the complexity, problem. Like you have more abilities, but then it also makes it harder to just, get on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And then you have people like myself and yourself who've been doing this for a long time, have solutions that have been running for years and years. And, you also have people who are, much more technologically forward thinking than myself, who are pushing the boundaries and trying to do things that have never been done. And so it's difficult, I imagine, to satisfy all of those audiences, right? And I always have sympathy and empathy for Claris as a company because they try to do that. And of course, there occasionally, there's something that you don't like or whatever. There's a feature that you would love for them to do, and why don't they focus on that? And I just always try to think about the difficulty in balancing all of these things. And for myself, I have a large client that I support. I've been with them or they've been with me for a long time, and they're very happy about some of the things like the OAuth stuff that they've added in recent times.
Hmm.
Like there's a few other things I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they've added a few really important features that are really helpful for somebody who's servicing a very large client.
Yeah. So like
But
back-end
then,
technology, fit in type things. Yeah. Adopting standards.
yeah, exactly, where IT departments don't feel uncomfortable because they're like, oh yes, FileMaker can do that. We have the encryption at
Hmm.
rest and the SSL and all of this other stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then it's also difficult if I'm a small person, who is trying to work at a little nonprofit somewhere. I don't really care about all of those things. So, how much focus does FileMaker or Claris put on all of these different
Hmm.
things? But I think they made a great choice in focusing on AI because that's what is on everybody's mind right now. I personally think there's a lot of hype around AI, but that's good, and I think that you're teaching a class. I'm going to be teaching the class at we can maybe talk about this, the conference coming up,
Yeah. I'd like to talk
which
about it
is,
because
yeah,
yeah, for sure. Let me get to that.
which is like real use cases, right? Like, how
Yeah.
are we actually going to use AI? Here's some things you can do with it today that actually make sense. So I've just segued myself into talking about the conference, which is, I think I mentioned that I went to 5 or 6 different conferences around the world last year, which was
Hmm.
really super fun. I've never actually traveled that much in my life, so it was a really big departure for me. Oh, hello, Kitty.
Hello,
And
Kitty.
so I decided I wasn't going to be able to travel that much in 2 years in a row. And I thought, you know what, we don't have a conference in Toronto. We've never had one.
Yeah.
And so I thought I would start a conference here, which I hope if you're listening and you're in the Toronto area or you're near Toronto, because Toronto's a hub. So it's pretty easy to get to. You can fly right into downtown. It's a 1 day conference.
When is it, Alexis?
Yeah, glad you asked. I wasn't just about to say it. It's a 1 day conference. May 26th is the conference day, and then there's a training day on May 27th. So I
Okay.
thought I
Talk
better
about it for a
be a
second.
little bit, you know, uh, like, what's the word? Modest. My first time out. I've never done a conference before. So I thought that I better just, not try to tackle too much. So it is 1 day plus the training day, and yeah, I'm super excited. There's been really good response so far, and you graciously agreed to join and do it. Why don't we talk a little bit about your course that you're going
Yeah.
to be offering?
Well, there's three, right? So there's you're doing one.
Yep.
Not on design though this time. I'm just kidding.
Yes, I am. UI design. Oh,
No, I was making a joke like you were gonna
I
do one
forgot to
on
laugh.
do one on underwater basket weaving, which actually I think I read that one college actually teaches that course just because. Um, so Wynn's doing one on server, which is going to be
Yes.
great. People are going to go to that. Is it 6 hours? I'm trying to remember the length of the training.
Yes, it's 9 till 4. So
Okay,
yeah, with a one
that'll be great.
hour lunch break. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing one on AI for that. And I've been doing a lot of proofs of concept and some production stuff directly related to the trainings that I've been doing on AI because I've been doing several of them. And there's actually like, I think 5 use cases that I've built for people now that are just drag and droppable into those industries to a degree. And and I think that's actually huge. I think the FileMaker community really needs to have actual real things that you can drop in to do. So I'm kind of giving a
Yeah, I
teaser.
agree.
But like one of the ones I maybe have talked about it before, um, uh, it actually crosses and uses a few different kinds of AI. But in a sales type of a situation where you have like a CRM, it has information on a customer that has notes about them, what products they've bought, where they are, what they're interested in, when their last purchase was, stuff like that. And then another database which has, oh, these are the products, and we have some new stuff coming in, or there's a sale on this one, or blah blah blah.
Hmm.
And then companies they do a newsletter, right? They send out a thing that says, here's our new stuff, this blah blah blah. So what this use case does is it marries those two up and makes a custom, um, basically sales newsletter or whatever for that client. And it's eerie how good it is. If you structure the JSON right, you do all these things that I've been testing. I tried a ton of different ways to do it until I finally got one that worked and impressed me. Um, was if you take that information about the customer and you take the information about the product and you use generative AI to connect them together so it really understands where it does and doesn't, connect. It would take a human like an hour or more to go through and put a letter together that AI can do in seconds. And then it can
Hmm.
just loop
Hmm.
through and do that for 1,000 customers. And it's just vastly more effective than I think a human, at this point, I think a human still would want to look at it. You wouldn't. So this is not something necessarily you would do for 1,000, but you could, do it for your top 50 customers or whatever and read it and see, yes, this is good. Send. Yes, this is good. Change this sentence, something like that. So we'll be talking about that use case. I think actually there's several different components that come up to that one. For example, there's a search that would be done at the beginning of that would say, for this product, who are the most likely customers, right? So that's not generative. That's, like a semantic search kind of a thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's the thing that's going to be super fun is actually connecting different types of AI methods that we have together to one use case that people can totally get. And some of the at the other end, another use case that's really simple is just using semantic search for a multilingual search on names and companies and text.
Oh, that's really helpful because that's hard to
Yeah,
do
it's
otherwise.
amazing. It reads right through typos. It's by far, having written search results, I thought a lot about search.
Right.
And this is the fuzzy logic or whatever matching that I've dreamed about forever, right? So that it just
Yeah.
reads through any kind of a typo and finds the one that's the closest. I didn't think it was supposed to work for names, but it totally does because
Oh,
semantic search is supposed to be about meanings of words, right? Like it
right.
it knows that, I don't know, boot and glove box are the same, boot and trunk, right? For car for English are the same kind of a thing. And it would also know that for lots of other languages. But those are words or phrases with specific meaning. But my last name doesn't have any specific meaning. It doesn't have, but if you spell it 18 different ways or in different languages, it works. It comes up as a match, and I think that's super useful.
Yeah, that is really
Anyway,
useful.
yeah, I'll be
I'm
going over
excited
all those use
excited about
cases.
that. Yeah, I think this is really great. And you're kind of showing how it can actually be used, not just sort of pie in the
Yep.
sky
Yeah, yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but practical things as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah,
how to
I'm
do
good.
it, but also what it can do. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a UI design course, not to compete with your course, although it is because we're on the same day.
Hmm.
But I ran this course in Austin at the end of Engage. I was kind of tired at the end, so it was like one of the like they had them at the training days at the end of the conference instead of at the
Hmm.
beginning. And I think that in some ways it was good because people were able to kind of take the course like they signed up during the conference, which they wouldn't have been able
Oh,
to do.
yeah.
But everybody was a little bit tired, and but it went really well. I had a really nice group, and I was able to do my UI design. I actually took the Apple Weather app and I broke it down. I created it in Figma, and I recreated it basically as close as I could get, and I could get pretty darn close, almost pixel for pixel in
Hmm.
Figma as a mock-up of the
Hmm.
actual app. And then I also created it in FileMaker, which was really fun to do. I spent, I don't know, like a few days just creating what I could, parts of it. There's some things that were easy to do and some things that obviously you can't do in FileMaker, like the horizontal scrolling that you get on the weather app is obviously not possible unless you do
Yeah.
JavaScript or something. So but
Animation.
that was the point of it was just to kind of see how far can we go with it and also
Hmm.
just to do something completely different, like it's not your normal application, but just see what does that look like in FileMaker and how does that differ from what we kind of normally do among
Yeah.
other topics. And well, you know this because I was teaching with you on your champion class
Which is
that we
another
had.
thing
We
I
did a
wanted to talk about.
co-teaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first time for either of us to teach a class together. To
Yes,
figure
that's
out. It's
right.
something I've been wanting to do forever, but I finally we're able to make it happen on the last iteration. And I'll talk about a little about the changes in the champion class too in a minute. Um, but yeah, it was really great to bring you into my students and have you with your teaching style that's quite different than mine, show all of the things that they need to know, show a ton of examples that showed this is bad design, this is good design, this is why it's bad, this is why it's good. These are the concepts that make it that way. That was great information for people. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm doing something similar at the UI design course that I'm going to be teaching or that I did teach as well. I'm really trying to it's very hard. Like design can appear very theoretical or kind
Hmm.
of it's not as concrete. I think we use this example of teaching JSON, right? It's like
Hmm.
here you go. You're the principles of JSON. You create it and you have JSON or you don't have JSON, right? It's either well formed or it's not. And
Yeah.
that's kind of, you learn the structure and
Yeah.
you can go with that.
To a
Design
degree.
is
There's still an art. Yeah.
yeah, well, design it does have rules, so there are definitely rules that you can create, or sorry, that you can follow in
Hmm.
order to create a good design. But the problem is that there's the combination is much there's an infinite possibility, right? And
Yeah.
so putting them all together is a little bit harder. And so I try to balance the theoretical and the practical because it's really hard to do the practical if you don't have an idea of what concepts are you're kind of going for.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, if you don't have somewhere to practice them, then it's really hard to kind of like understand how
Yeah.
these actually play out in a real solution. So I feel like I'm always kind of walking that line of trying to teach people the concepts and the principles of design, and then giving them an opportunity to actually see how those are applied in the real world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but it was really fun. Thank you so much for inviting me to that. It was great.
Yeah, it was great. Like with JSON, if you miss a parentheses, it doesn't work, right? So there's a technical level that you have to have that right for it to work. There isn't anything like that in design. I mean, obviously
No.
the items have to actually be on the page, but but it's much more infinite in the scale. And then like in JSON, it's like, what are you using it for? How are you using it? Which things are you putting together, to achieve your end? But it's very, very different than, something that's visual, and visual things hit you
Yeah,
so
and what
quickly, and music too. You experience them in a very, very different way, I think, as a user.
Yes, and what occurred to me while you were saying that is that it's harder to know if your design isn't that great. Like with Jason, if you're
Hmm.
missing a parentheses, you get warned right away
Yeah.
something's wrong, even if you don't necessarily know exactly
Yeah.
what. It's clearer that it's not working. Whereas I think with design, people aren't necessarily going to tell you, so you kind of have to impute, oh, well, people are having a lot of trouble, or they're confused, or they're asking lots of questions. It's kind of
Hmm.
like there's symptoms of bad design problems, but it's not as clear that that's what the issue is, right?
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective, it's a little more challenging as well. But what I like to remind people is that they're consuming design all the time. And so
Mhm.
you as a consumer of design, you actually do know what good design is. It's just that like when you're trying to create
Have
it,
a
it's
weather
hard to
app.
connect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder to connect those two things together. So you kind of have to kind of stand back a little bit from your own designs as well and
Hmm.
just evaluate them if you can, which is hard to do, but I know. But one way of doing it is saying, okay, well, if I was putting myself in the shoes of the user, like how would I react to this? Or you know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
but the other thing I find challenging as well is this a lot of times the separation between UI and UX design is not always
Mm.
super clear. And I
Yeah.
think partly it's because they're often done by the same person. But I thought of a
Hmm.
metaphor for it. And I don't know if you agree with this because we don't always agree, but I think that doing UI design is a lot like being a musician, right? So you have notes on the page and you're playing them and you're interpreting them for the audience. And UX design is more like being a composer. So it's really hard to be a composer if you don't play an instrument, if you're not a musician as well. So it's very hard to be a UX designer for software. Maybe you can be a UX designer for other things, but
Hmm.
it's hard to be a UX designer if you don't know anything about visual design. I mean, maybe you're not a great musician if you're a composer, maybe,
Hmm.
but you're at least understand it, right? And then you are creating something, the structure and all of the, things that people need to actually put on the performance. So I
Right.
think it's sort of like that, but it's confusing sometimes because sometimes people come to UI design class and they think, well, I'm going to be able to solve all of my design problems. And really, UI design is just a slice of design, and it's just too much to teach in a day, right? You just can't
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
all. But yeah, I just wanted to make that distinction
I
between the
like that.
two.
Well, we're both musicians. I like that analogy. I'm actually a composer and a conductor and
Oh,
a
right.
play.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you. It's really hard. In composition school, I studied how to write for instruments that don't play, right? And so to
Yeah.
be able to write for, if you play flute and trumpet and, viola I played in school, I know how to
I'm
write for
sorry.
strings and I know how to write
Just
for
kidding.
winds. I know, whatever. Cellist.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I
Um,
actually love the viola, by the way. I really do.
it's really nice. It was fun to play. Um,
Sorry. But anyway, you were saying about
you can get in any orchestra. It doesn't matter how bad you are.
oh no, no.
I'm sorry.
Let's
I'm
not
sorry.
dunk too much on the
So,
violists.
like, I guess what I was trying to say is you know how to write for those instruments because you have, the family and the sound and the capabilities. But writing for the harp, whole completely different thing, right? It's a
Yeah.
very different because of the complexity of all the pedals and the notes and how they work and how long strings. You have to really study how to write for instruments that are outside your area. But I believe you can do
Yeah.
it. Composers, you know, uh, Beethoven wrote, he went deaf at around what, 1801, and he wrote tons of symphonies after that, not being able to hear, but in his head, he
That's
knew
mind-blowing to
exactly
me.
what it was going to sound like, even though there was completely different, lines of everything. And having sung Beethoven's Symphony 9, I can tell you he did not know how to write for choir. It was really, really hard to sing and some of the lines are anyway.
That is an amazing piece. I played it as well a few years ago. And it's just it's one of those things that you just are like your heart is full when you and he's
Mhm,
singing about friendship, right? Like
mhm.
the brotherhood of mankind, and just like it's just really
Yeah.
inspiring. And so I'm sorry that it's hard to sing, but it's also a great piece.
Well, I
So
don't know if it's
we'll
that hard
forgive
to sing.
Beethoven
It's
for
like
that one.
the ranges and some of the other things about it are not best practices, I would say. But then if you think about it, like when the
Yeah,
voice comes in at that spot, it's just to the drama. And then
yeah,
also when the voices start, they're given so much space. And that whole, oh yeah, yeah, that whole
yeah.
little thing in the first third of the last movement is just chilling how good it is. Anyway.
Yeah, and so I guess just to bring this back to design, I think really
Mhm.
we're saying that you really have to think about who's going to be using this, who's going to be interpreting this, and tailoring what you're creating for that person because it's not the same. Like if you're designing for 5-year-olds, right? That's not the
Mhm.
same as designing for engineers, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so just to kind of connect the metaphor, I think that it's really apt to think about who is your audience, right? And how are they going to be able to interact with this?
Mhm.
Yeah, it was super fun to be a part of your class, and it was really nice to sort of sit in and and borrow a class for a bit. And
Yeah.
they seem to be really a great group of people as well. And I'm excited about seeing you in person here in Toronto
Me too.
in
I
May.
know.
Yeah,
So,
and Wim is also doing a class as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to
yep.
cut you off. Wim DeCord is going to be doing his server class here as well, which he ran in Austin. And so, if you weren't able to go to Austin, Toronto is closer, and it's also the prices are all in Canadian
Million
dollars. So if
dollars.
you're coming from the US, you get a bit of a discount basically.
Yeah.
So about
Canadian
30
dollars are
to
like US dollars, but they're on sale.
Yes,
That
exactly.
was mean. I'm sorry.
We're used to it. Just don't call
Euros, on
us
the other hand,
state.
yeah, euros are like 88 cents, I think, right now. So, uh, you get 0.88 euro for the dollar. Yeah, I think.
Well, you'll still be get a bit of a discount for in Canadian dollars as well when you come here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Toronto's a hub, so I think I mentioned this. You can fly right into the downtown if you're like Boston, New York, Chicago, any of
Mm.
those sort of major airports. There's
Yeah.
Porter, which are in Air Canada, I think both fly right into downtown, so you don't even need like a cab. You can just kind of take the subway or walk. So I tried to make
Oh,
everything
oh,
really
nice.
central, so to make it easy for people. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and you have it
and I
all in the
also
same
think
hotel. So you've got a lot of the things about conferences you got exactly right. So I'm glad you did that.
yeah. The other thing too, I was going to say is that I know it's a chaotic time, and there's a lot going on, and we don't know about the what's going to happen to the economy.
Mhm.
But I genuinely believe that investing in yourself and investing in your own skills is really like the one thing you can count on. And I know it means taking a day off or taking a couple of
Mhm.
days to attend a conference. But if you've never done a conference before, they really are an amazing way to build the community, get to know other people, just to see other people who do what you do, right? And a chance to kind of connect and also, learn something really valuable and new. So I hope that people will come and join us in Toronto.
I hope so too. Uh, I'm not sure if we've talked about this, but if someone can't get there, can they still take the class online? I've done that at other conferences with my AI
Yes.
classes, and it works really well.
I considered it, but it's my first time doing a conference, so
Mhm.
I didn't want to try to take on too many moving parts. So right now, no. But if we do future iterations, if it's well received, then definitely, if we're going to do training, it's a possibility. But at the moment, no, there's no online portion. Sorry.
Okay.
Be there or be
Let's see.
square.
Pardon? Well,
Be there or be square. Yeah.
yeah, I get that. Uh, Not to do too much plugs for stuff, but my champion class, I just changed it a lot,
Okay.
and also didn't. So the content, I have a database that has all these lessons that I've taught over the years, and I've broken them down into 1 hour, um, like really focused uh, lessons on one particular topic, like looping scripting, or this is the introduction to themes and styles, and this is themes and styles version 2. So all of them are really curated to be the right length and with a really specific goal. Um, and the champion class was like 10 weeks long and had 40 of those lessons in it. But it was just kind of one big thing. And I decided to actually break it back out into three classes. So there's going to be like a foundations class, and then the intermediate one, like for a developer, and then an advanced or expert class, which also has all the AI content. So the first two won't have
Okay.
AI, but the last one will. And each one of
Hmm.
them is $1,500, and you can sign up on Navar.training. So that's new. So
Okay.
before I didn't really ever sell them directly. I wanted people to email me, talk to me about it, like and get a feel of whether they were going to be a good fit for it or not. But I didn't advertise the price, but um, I'm not sure why. But anyway, now I'm doing that,
Okay, that sounds good. I
like
mean, it's
everybody
hard
else
to
is
know
doing.
sometimes as a trainer, right, what people are need and want, and different
Mhm.
actors need and want different things. But I can say people ask a lot about themes and styles, and I'm also working on some stuff to try to
Mhm.
meet that need as well because it can be challenging. And I did do a presentation last Engage about themes and styles. So if people are interested in that topic, you can look up I think it's on the community from 2024 Engage about themes and styles because I think it's a recurring thing that it can make a difference. If you never use themes and styles and you have a large database, it can add a lot of CSS
I don't
to
even know
your,
how. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of legacy databases that don't have it, but I have no idea how to do anything these days without starting with a theme and being
Mhm.
rigorous with it. I try to teach my students that every single object on every single layout be within a style and that there's no custom CSS anywhere, ideally.
Yeah,
And that you keep
ideally.
all of the areas with really limited. You don't have like 150, styles for fields or something. Keep them really consistent because that's, I think you would probably agree, that makes for better design because there's less angry fruit salad.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I would say is that I would opt on to create two different styles if you have, let's say they look the same, but they're for two different purposes. I probably would choose to separate those because one of the problems that happens is that people say, oh, well, I have this style, and then they change it, and then it affects a bunch of things that weren't actually that
Hmm.
same type of object
Right.
elsewhere. So I would opt, even though it's a little bit more code to load when you open the file, because that's when the theme and styles get loaded.
Hmm.
Um, I would probably still have two styles, even if they were functionally identical. But if they were used in two different contexts, I probably would separate them out so that
Give
you
me an
can change
example.
them, and know. Well, like let's say you had a field, like a merge field text that was a certain size, and
Hmm.
then you were also using that as instruction text or something, right? Same
Hmm.
font, same size, same weight and everything, but one was specifically for merged field data and one was for writing instructions. I would probably separate and have two styles for that because if I ever decided,
Same
well,
in
I want my
mine.
instructional text to be bold or something,
And to have
or I
different
want to change
padding.
it, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Right. Then it's easier because then you're like, oh, I'm not also changing all my merge field because
absolutely.
you've used the same style. It's also hard to know unless you do a database analysis to know where that style has been used. It's just an extra bit of work to do. So if you know that
Yeah.
you've only ever used it in one context, then that's yeah, you
Yeah, yeah,
sort of
yeah, yeah. I have a style for a text object that's editable, and then one that's not editable with the exact same specs, except the editable one is a different contrast color, so you know when you're looking at the layout that it's editable. And then I have a
right.
style for text object for like a merge field or text object with the exact same font and padding, so that when you put it on, it lines up perfectly. And I
Yes.
have an exact same style for a button bar, so that you can use a button bar as a text object.
Yes, that's
You put
right.
it on and everything is
Sometimes
lined up. So
that's
when
right.
when the
Sometimes
user
you need
looks
it
at
to
it, they
look the
can't
same.
tell.
That's
Hmm.
right. Exactly. Different function, but it's the same. Different
Yeah,
types of objects, but you need them for some reason. Yeah,
yeah.
that's absolutely correct. Yeah, for
All the
sure.
classes I teach, I give a lot of example files. Actually, in the one I'm doing with your conference, there will be an example file with all of the stuff configured and working in it, and that'll also have the theme that I've worked on that has all these things. So, for what that's worth.
Also, a quick shout out. The sponsors this year are FM Cloud, Robert No from Accolade Plus Accolade,
Mm-hmm.
and Charles Delphs from FM Better Forums.
Mm-hmm.
So they've all been super helpful and really great supporters and given all kinds of support to the conference.
Yeah.
And
Will they
I'm
be
really
there
grateful
too?
for that. They will be there. Fabrice will not, but there's David Lalonde, who's Canadian,
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
is the Canadian rep for that. He will be at the conference as well. But also Fabrice is if you as the speaker want to host files, he can do that for free as well. He mentioned that on LinkedIn yesterday.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
just to let you know, if you need a host, then he can do that. But yeah, I'm super looking forward to this. I mean, I never really thought I would ever host a conference. It just kind of came to me of like, well, nobody else is doing it, so I guess
Yeah.
maybe I'll just do it and see what happens.
I think I had the same thoughts back in the day when I hosted a few Pause and Error conferences a long time ago. We had two of them in Portland, I think. Anyway, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you're going through, and I'm very happy that you did this. Are doing this.
Oh, well, thank you.
What other stuff you got for me today? I have one other thing. I
Um,
have an AI thing I want to ask you about actually.
okay, ask me.
So there's a feature that came with a recent version of ChatGPT that you might not know. In the past, when you generated images and you actually had to do something with text, it had no idea. You could say,
It just,
make
yeah.
a logo that says Navar training and use blah, blah, blah color. And now it's phenomenal at that. So, well, let's just say it's great at it. It's not phenomenal, but you can do multiple tries. Like you should definitely play with this because for making graphics, and it can do whatever size you ask for. You can say, 2:1 or square or whatever, and it'll make transparent GIFs. I don't know if it make movies yet or not, but um, uh, I found it very, very useful to make art for for special purpose things, like for a newsletter, or for the website, or for anything like that. Um,
Mhm.
so it's come a long way in the last few months, really. So before you could use it to make really cool. Actually, in the class, remember one of your assignments, which I loved, was for the students to make a poster
Yep.
and to just get outside of FileMaker entirely and to make a poster for a rock show. And you gave us the specifics of what it was supposed to be. And I had an image that I created for just for the background for the poster that was very dark and dismal and disturbing and fun. Um,
It was very
but
metal, as I recall.
there's no way with the tools at the time that you could say make a poster with this, but now I think you probably could do that. It would be,
Mhm.
I don't know if you get the results that you want, but you could, yeah, at least you could do it and it would actually put all the text there in the color that you specify, with the font that you specify, with the background you specify, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm hoping I guess I'm asking if you think that might be useful for part of your work. I don't think it's going to be able to do I haven't tried things like mock up a layout that does this, 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 and expect results that are close to what you could do. But I would encourage you to try it, and I also would just kind of like to know your opinion about that sort of thing.
Well, I feel really of two minds about generative AI art because, as
Mhm.
the parent of an artist and
Yeah.
as something of a designer myself, um, I I really am of two minds. Like on the one hand, it to me it can be seen as just another way of you've got Canva, for example, which has a
Mhm.
library of elements. And so, how is AI that much different from that? Although, presumably, Canva paid somebody to design those elements. And so, I am a little concerned about, generating art that's derivative of art that people created. And where's the line about that? On the other
Mhm.
hand, the cat is out of the bag. I don't think there's any going back on it.
Right.
Um, and
Also,
I
all
think it
art is
depends
derivative of
on,
other, like a human can only do pretty much derivative of what other
yes,
people have done too. So, to a degree.
true. Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm concerned about, artists, being able to get credit for the art that they do. And so, anyway, I'm just putting that out there as a
Yep.
concern. In terms of
Yeah.
quality, I have not tried the latest version. The previous version, I asked it for like to do just a mock-up of a layout. It was awful. It was
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
It might be better now, and so that might not be as much of a thing. But I don't know. I think it's kind of like anything else, like other than the use cases where you were talking about earlier, where you have a
Mhm.
specific business situation, you have a problem that needs to be solved that is easy for AI to do and hard for you to do. I think that's really a great use case for AI.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of like generating stuff, um, I think that it's good to a point, and it's similar to using a template or,
Mhm.
buying a theme from somebody else. You're probably still, it's only going to take you part of the way, and you're going to need to bring your experience and expertise the rest of the way to actually solve the problem. Like I
Yeah.
can go online and see a gajillion layouts, and none of them quite solve my problem. I'm still going to
Right.
need to do requirements
Customize it.
gathering and yeah, exactly, and
Yeah.
make changes and stuff. And AI, so I think it can maybe give you a bit of a leg up, especially if you're a beginner. But there's other ways to do that too, right? You can get templates and you can look and see what other designers have done. There's lots and lots of
Yeah.
software out there. So it's just another way
Yeah.
of doing that.
So let me ask you this. So um, I think as creatives who do databases and compose music and play music, we have the concept of the overall thing that we want to do, and then we have the pieces and parts that we have to pick from. And a piece could be a theme that you buy. And I really think I've been working on coming up with the AI examples, kind of like the things you might like, for example, the plugins in FileMaker, right? Where you can add in a calendar, you can add in a rich text editor, you can add in, those ones that are now built in, right? I really think the AI examples that I'm talking about are those. There's a common business problem that a certain set of tools brought together in a certain way can do this thing in just the same way that um, many other design patterns can be brought in, whether it's a theme or some JSON thing, or even just like a module you've developed in the past. Like I've got a notes module that just works for, date and timestamp notes that you can assign to users. I don't need to redo that. I just kind of copy. It's such a small thing. I just kind of bring it in. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, right? Design patterns that solve specific issues. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before. I think it's incumbent on the developers who do AI to be thinking about those areas where there's a really clear win that you can integrate. And then some solutions may just have one or none, and some might have five of those, depending upon what they're trying to do. Anyway, that's my take.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you still need to bring everything together and make a
Yep.
solution that works, right? And so, how can you do that in the most efficient and effective way that you can?
Yeah.
So,
And that's all
I don't,
driven by the human.
yeah, and I don't fault people for using things that they find effective and tools that they find useful. So, yeah, I think at a certain point, AI is just another one of those tools, and you can decide how much that you want to use it. As a creative person, you brought that up. I am part of a hand embroidery group on Facebook. Every single day, there are multiple AI images that are posted by people who are like, how do I do this? I paid $20 to somebody
Yeah.
for this pattern, and it was just an AI generated image that is not possible to do
Yeah.
in hand embroidery. That just doesn't look like that. It's or crochet patterns, right?
Yeah.
Um, so people are there's this dark side where people are exploiting the AI imagery to make money, and they're selling
Mm.
something that is basically fake to people.
Right.
And so, but I mean, that's the history of the internet too, right? So you have to
That's
take
true.
everything and try to put guardrails around it as much as you can and take the good parts and try to minimize the not so great parts. And this is really no
Yep. Yep.
different.
Yep.
So, if it works for you and you find it useful, then, go for it. For the moment, I don't find it super useful. And also, I like to customize things a lot. So even if I
Mhm.
had a module, I probably am still going to make some changes to it to fit in with whatever pattern that I'm using because all of my clients use slightly different UIs and the colors are a little different. So there's always a little bit of tweaking that happens,
Well, I mean, that's all
even
part of
if
the
you're using
conversation.
a standard module.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
if you're using AI with a zero shot where you ask one thing and you get it and you're done, that's not using it right. So it's really about the conversation. Like you get the
right.
first thing, which is crap, and you go like this, change this, and then you keep sculpting it. It remembers everything it did, so it gets better and better as you go. I use it for a lot of
But you
research
have to know where
things.
to guide it, right?
Well,
So,
yeah,
you still have to have that knowledge of guiding it. So you're still
absolutely.
an integral part of that process at the end of
Yes,
the day.
in the
Yeah,
driver's seat, no question about it.
yeah,
But I'm using it as a tool that may be able to do those things faster than I can.
yeah,
um, because there's things like I think you said it really really well. It's like for the things that it can do faster than you and close to as well as you use it for that. I asked it to design a 2D like house, make a three-bedroom house on one floor with a kitchen of this size and blah blah blah. Man, it was comical. It put staircases going up to out of a window, rooms with no doors. I did several of them and I laughed so hard because and I think it's the same as your was it knitting fabric example?
embroidery. Yeah,
Embroidery. It can't know, right? There's things that it's just outside of what its knowledge is. But as things become inside of its knowledge, which now like, graduate level math, uh, those are things that are going to become really useful. And I think now it's actually to the point where it can make graphic elements really, really usefully, custom elements with text and really specific stuff that's new for me. And I don't know exactly which model
yeah.
that's in.
But
Yeah.
you're still going to need to know. like it still benefits you to understand UI design though at a theoretical level so that you can
Yeah,
assess what it's
prompt.
giving you, right? I think
You can
that's still
assess what
really
it's given
useful.
you, but you also give a really specific prompt, right? That whole prompt engineer thing from back in the day. You have to
Yeah.
tell it exactly what you want. You have to know, you have to know how it is going to take the prompt and how to write a good one. Um, yeah, there's a lot of other things that you have to know. How to use a tool, right? You can't, if someone gives you a cello and say play, they need some instruction, a lot of instruction. Not only, even just to hold the bow like this, hold your hands like this so that your hands relaxed. Don't hold it in your lap like a guitar, which even though it's fun. Um, you know, and before you even, draw a bow and see how cool that low C sounds. Um, uh, which
I'm
is,
partial to the low G on the violin. I love that string. That's great.
oh yeah, yeah. I think
Anyway,
that,
we're talking too much about music.
yeah. I never really liked that low note on the viola as much. It just didn't, the body wasn't quite big enough for that. It's an octave above the cello, but the G on the viola is great.
Yeah, yeah. I once had a dream that I had convinced the music director that I could play the viola because I'm like, it's tuned the same. Like, how hard this
Yeah.
can this be?
Hmm.
And part of my back of my mind, I was like, you don't know how to play the viola. But for whatever reason in my dream, I was very convinced that I was going to sit at the back of the viola section and no one's going to notice that I actually don't know how to play this instrument. And so then everything was great until I looked at the music and I
Oh
realized, oh, viola's an
yeah.
alto clef, and I have no idea how to read alto clef.
Yeah.
And so I woke up and I was just laughing because that was the most ridiculous thing. And so, violas can feel
Yeah.
superior to everybody else because they know
It's
alto
worse
clef and
than
we
that. That
don't.
it's a movable clef. It's not always there. And they sometimes it'll go into treble clef and sometimes they'll just
Yeah, but
move
I can read
to
treble.
clef.
I can read treble and tenor and bass. Alto's the only one I can't read.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because that's what cello uses. Anyway, people don't want to hear about all our music, little in jokes, but
Maybe they do. I don't know. There's a lot of
yeah.
musicians in the community, but it's definitely fun to talk about. And I also really like talking about like the parallels. So when you bringing it up as a uh, um, like an example, you have to have a different word for it. It's such a good parallel or no
Metaphor.
metaphor. Thank you. Um, yeah, I find coming up with metaphors for things really, really helpful because you can torture them, uh, maybe past the point where they're useful, but you can definitely find other elements of it that really connect to something. That helps as a
Yeah, and
teacher.
the other thing I find is that UI design sense is a little bit like learning an instrument. Like I can give an 8-week class or even a 1 day class.
Mm,
But I had somebody come back and do the class a second time. And he said, oh, I got so much more from it as well because you hear it once and then you need to kind of practice, right? And you need to experiment with all of these different things in your own work. And then when you come back to it, you might have the same lesson again, but you kind of, it fits differently and you understand more about it. So I cannot teach somebody to be an amazing designer in 8 weeks, but you can definitely learn the vocabulary, like you were talking
mhm.
about, if you are going to prompt an AI or do anything or just even do research, you have a certain vocabulary, you understand what that concept means, and then you can learn more about that one thing and then come back to it over and over again. And over a period of time, you improve and you get better. It's just like when you're learning an instrument.
Yep, definitely. You gotta practice it. You gotta use it. You gotta think about it, and you gotta make mistakes, and then correct them. Get advice from experts such as yourself.
And the good thing about design is the mistakes are usually not fatal, right? They're
Yeah.
just, you're a little bit, you're not as effective as you could be. So you always have an opportunity to redo it and get closer and revise. It's just nothing set in stone here, right? And so it's not like making a mistake in a concert where it's like, oh my gosh. It's very subtle and you have an opportunity to constantly go back. And there's no right, like it's frustrating that sometimes that there's no right answer, but it's also good that there's no right answer
Hmm.
because there's multiple solutions to any given issue, right? Even from a design perspective. And
Hmm.
so that means that you're just trying to come up with something that works well. And if you can improve that, then that's even better. But it's like there's nothing is going to be like, oh, that's
Yeah,
horrible.
there's
I
not
mean,
there's
it
not
might be
yeah, there's not a
not
right
great, but
answer, but there are many right answers, and there's also many
right.
wrong answers. Right.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but I think that's the case with kind of any art. There's no one right way, but there are some right ways.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't think you can even say they're gradation. They're just right. uh, I don't know. In the way that Stravinsky, the Rite of Spring is right, and Bach, Brandenburg concertos are right, and yet they're completely different. You know, we're gonna nerd
Genres
out.
or yeah.
Alexis, you're the best. I'm so
Oh,
looking
thanks, Matt.
forward to this conference.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. The weather is steadily improving. So we haven't had it was a bit rainy and cold, but May is usually a pretty nice time. There's lots to do in Toronto. I'm going to post a link on LinkedIn of like things to do in TO. So
Mhm.
if people want to spend a little more time and do things around the city,
And what's the
just
website for
just
the three
ends
people who
here.
are still with us?
It's elevatefm.ca.
Really? Okay. Alexi Folger is always with us to the end. Hi, Alexi. We always have a tradition of saying that. All right.
That's
Thanks so much
nice.
for your time.
Oh, thank you, Matt. It was nice to chat with you.